Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hashtag Event Icons, where you get to chat with the icons of the events industry. I am your host, Alex Plaxen, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Brandt Krueger. Very
Hello.
excited to be on the show with you today. It's been a while since you and I have done a show together.
It has been, yeah.
And today, you know, it's December. We're getting down to the wire here, the last of the decade, actually. And so, of course, we have to discuss 2020. And today we're talking event design trends for 2020. And we have the best of the best joining us today. We're going to be talking everything from colors to technology to food and beverage to sustainability. If it's an event design trend, we'll be talking about it today. So let's get to it.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of Hashtag Event Icons.
Presented by Endless Events.
The show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything.
Just go to www.event-icons.com to ask questions.
Our iconic guests will answer them live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better the conversation. So please help share Hashtag Event Icons
on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com.
Now, without any further delay, this is Hashtag Event Icons.
So you may be familiar with our guests. They joined us last year to talk about event design trends for 2019. David Merrell and Susie Perelman are back to talk 2020. So David, for those who don't know you, share a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, hey everybody. As you could probably tell, I'm David Merrell. I'm not Susie Perelman. I own a company out in Los Angeles called AOO Events. We are a live event design and production house based in Los Angeles, California. We have about a 25,000 square foot warehouse. So in addition to being a strategist, event strategist with our clients, we are also a vendor in a number of things. We have our own lines of furniture and decor. We have a custom build shop for woodworking and metal, and we have our own floral shop. So kind of dabble in all the event decor, but really kind of play in the more the agency side, the strategy side of the business nowadays.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. And Susie, tell us a little bit about yourself for those who are unfamiliar with you.
Absolutely. My name is Susie Perelman. I'm the owner of a company called Mosaic, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My business focuses on fabric decor, and we, of course, work a lot with tablecloths, napkins, pillows, pretty much anything that is a decor component. And over the decades, really what that means has changed. So it's not just your old tablecloth and napkin setup anymore. So my business really has evolved, and I really pay close attention to what's happening in the world, what's happening in fashion, and what's happening in our industry to help propel me forward each year and create collections that I curate and offer them to different event professionals as well as end users throughout the country.
Awesome. Well, since you're both veterans of the show, you've been on before. Normally we ask a question about how you got involved in the events industry, but today we're going to switch it up a little bit for you two. And I hear, Susie, that you have an amazing travel story to share. Well, multiple amazing stories. We're only going to ask for one.
Okay.
Tell us your favorite travel story in the last year.
Well, I will say I love to travel, and Dave and I talk about this a lot because we sort of both like to unplug and find inspiration from the world around us. So I travel, never been to a place that I haven't loved. In fact, on Sunday, my family and I are leaving to go to New Zealand, which I'm super excited about. But one trip this summer that we went to actually was to Yellowstone Park. And the reason I loved it was for two reasons. One is I'm really, really big on wellness and mindfulness and clearing my head. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as it pertains to events, event design, and sort of what's going on in our industry. But also in particular, I sort of fell in love with the bubbling, oozing sulfur mud And I'm a big color girl, and I'm especially interested in acidy colors right now. And so for me, just to watch the steam and all that was happening with the oxides and the iron and the sulfur, it actually just blew my mind, and it was a really great experience.
Oh, that kind of acid. Oh, sorry. I was,
Yeah.
not following
Different
that.
type of trip.
Oh, gotcha. When you said acidy colors, I was starting to go down a very different road.
It's funny. I don't see you, Susie, and think bubbling acid, but
But you don't know me from a few decades ago.
Yeah, this is their latter years. In the earlier years, she was all about it. Just like
Grandma, I'm like the grandma phase I'm coming.
Well, David, I know you wanted to share an event story. What is your favorite event story?
We had this year for us was we had an event that something that I've never experienced in my life, and it was a fundraiser. There's gonna be a lot of articles coming out on this because it was pretty epic. There was a fundraising event we did for a very well-known cancer institute attached to one of the biggest universities in Southern California. You can figure out which one it is. But we were, not only was it a fundraising, a gala fundraiser, but it was also kind of a reveal of the new building that they were building for this fundraising. And it's a iconic cancer cancer research building with major names attached to it all over the country. And to set this up a little bit, there was in the audience, there's going to be 14 billionaires. There's 450 people, 14 billionaires sitting in the audience, which I've never had that many, and at least 40 celebrities sit in the audience, and that was just the audience. James Corden's the headliner. Red Hot Chili Peppers was James Corden was the MC. Red Hot Chili Peppers was the headliner. David Foster was musical producer, so high profile. This particular event, because it's a cancer research institute, they didn't really have any, they wanted to do it in the building. And so the second floor of the building is this massive parking garage with 16-foot ceilings, and which to me is just like, like I'm like a kid in a candy store because I'm designing and completely transforming this parking garage. And it was intricate. There's the word, intricate. It was intricate design and everything. And on the day of the week of the event, Monday, we're loading in the events on Thursday. We start loading at 8:30 in the morning. And at 10:30, we get a call. And for reasons I don't really want to go into, we could not do the event in that building. The certificate of occupancy was pulled for a number of reasons beyond anybody's control. So you can imagine then we were literally a year in planning this location. The day of the event, 2 hours into install, we're being told, sorry, the event's not going to happen. And I won't even go through my anxiety on that day, but by 8:30 that night, we had somehow miraculously found a brand new location. And at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, we were on site with all the vendors. We'd actually had the other vendors pull out, repack, and just wait for next instructions. 7:30 in the morning the next day, and this is Tuesday, we're scanning the space and starting to come up with a plan. Obviously, we didn't walk out of there in that meeting the first day till probably about 2:30 in the afternoon, where I went home and just started doing diagrams. And we still have people loading in because we couldn't even wait till the next day to load in, because Wednesday we're supposed to be done and doing rehearsals. Not somehow, the event got loaded in. By Wednesday morning, we had all the diagrams done. We had everything in on time. I do not understand how any of it was as flawless as it was going in. And the even weirder part is that, I couldn't redesign this event. I had to take the pieces that were designed to go in a covered parking garage and then use them in the space, which was an open air field, basically in between buildings. Now, the other aspect of this is this was the day we went in there was 3 days after the Getty fire started. I don't know if you guys remember the big Getty fire that was here this year, where it started at the Getty building and burned all the way to, and we're in Santa Monica. So open air in Santa Monica, Getty fire, if you know your geography of California, we're literally 3 miles from the fire. And for some reason, the Santa Ana winds weren't affecting us, and this is open air, Santa Ana's, it wasn't affecting Santa Monica as it was the mountains and everything out in the valley. So we're good. And we got in. I don't know how everything got set. The weird part is the event actually looked more pretty there than it did in the parking garage. And I know what the parking garage was going to look like. And I was sitting there with a client. I'm going, you know what? We're going to get this in. Of course, she scolded me for saying, don't say anything like that. We don't want to jinx it. And we're about 2.5 hours before the event. And I'm looking at, what's this? And there's white stuff like snow falling from the sky. It was ash.
Oh,
Now, ash is not necessarily a problem unless you're presetting your first course salad. Then it could be a little bit of a problem. And we preset our first course salad. So, so that's the one thing I did not anticipate happening. The bottom line of that one was we called a rental company, and of course we couldn't get a rental out to get plate covers to put on top of there just to cover these salads. We couldn't get that rental company, couldn't even get them to us in time, pull them from the inventory. We called a second, couldn't get them to a third one we called. It was about probably 20 miles away, and we had no one to go there and get it. So we had to call Uber, an Uber driver to go pick those things up and bring them to us. And as soon as we got them there, we put the salad plates on the first set of plates on the table, and the ash stopped, and we didn't need them anymore. So that was my fun story for the year. But redesigning that while it's supposed to be installing is no
crazy.
fun.
That gave me anxiety just listening to that story.
Stay tuned. There's a lot of articles coming out on it.
It hurts. Oh,
Yeah,
and the
it was
communication.
books for me.
I have so many questions, and we
might have to come back and do another episode on just this.
If you saw the pictures, you would think it was designed for this space because it was flawless.
Wow.
But it was really meant for a completely different facility. Well, indoors in a parking garage going to outdoors in a field with the Santa Ana winds and fires burning all around you. So there's my story.
So on that note, what do you think top event design trends are for 2020?
So nice segue.
Besides something that can look better outside.
Right.
Well, I will tell you that, as we explained to you earlier, Susie and I right now are in the middle of our research for all of our trends for the special events presentation we do. Now, special event and cater sources combined, and the convention is moved from what was traditionally second, third week of January with the special event to 1st of March. So we're in the middle of our in our research right now. And we actually just got off the phone earlier today where we have identified the top trends that are kind of raising to the surface. And we've identified which ones we want to dig into more. So while we might be able to talk about the trends we see coming up, we may not be as intelligent about talking about them because we're still going through all that research. However, with that said, the seminar we did last year, which I believe we talked a little bit on here, those themes continue. So right now we're going to talk about themes that have kind of continued from before and where we're seeing them going for this year.
Great.
So,
And that is something that we've definitely noticed. I think year to year, because Dave and I have been doing this together a number of years running now, some things that we see just grow more and more, and some sort of evolve. So they're new iterations of the same concept. And we never have enough time to get everything into our presentation. And so sometimes we just shorten some categories, and then the next year they grow and explode. And I think that that's one case here right now. We can sort of jump into the wellness, mindfulness trend. We have definitely noticed that over the years, and we've actually even featured different like high boy stations where you can sit and pedal on bikes and, keep yourself doing physical activity while at events. And we have touched upon those in the past, but this year now more than ever, sort of in the state of the world, and also just with technology and research, everything pertaining to well-being, to sustainability, to mindfulness, all of these things are really exploding in a big way. I think they're affecting life in general, but they're definitely now having a new landscape and a new platform in our event industry.
Yeah, and we should back up a little bit because last year's overarching theme, we really talked about, we're now responsible for transformative events. And by transformative events, we don't mean taking a raw space and turning it into something else. We're talking about transforming someone's opinion, transforming someone's mindset into a new way of thinking. And it's been the theme that we kind of talked about before, we saw emerging. And it's one of the best sets of news the special events industry could get, because, you know, we're now seeing that marketing budgets are completely starting to move towards live events and away from print and television advertising. In fact, we're at the point now where we're up to 25 to 30% of overall marketing budgets are now being funneled towards live events. That's really good news for the special events industry.
Yeah,
and it's really good news because, yeah, good.
Yeah, and also with that, so one of the things that we touched upon in great detail last year was interactive experiences. And so in the transformation, we are transporting people to this new mindset, and through it, you know, there's all these Instagrammable moments, and there's a way to take the content, bring it home and push it out in your own way, and make it authentically yours. And I think that, again, this year, it takes it one step further, as we will continue to see people making the experiences their own. And as Dave said, this is great news for us, because sort of gone are the days where you sit and watch something, very sedentary, stagnant situations. Everything is about engagement, and really being involved in the process. And I think that, you know, that's something we touched upon, and it's continuing in a big way right now.
Well, gone are the days where our industry is looked at as a frivolous industry that has low barriers of entry, and that we're not really professionals. And, you know, we could do it on our own, but we'll hire them if we need to. You know, there's a big conversation within ILEA right now, which is starting to spill over into MPI, and that's about commoditization of our industry. And it's based on the fact that we are not respected as professionals. And the reason why I bring that up is because this is the perfect time where money is actually starting to pour towards our industry. So we have, as an industry, the ability to pull ourselves out of that mom and pop mentality or mom and pop reputation that we've had, and actually become an integral part of a strategic process based around the extension of a brand or messaging within a corporation. And really the same thing applies whether it's a corporation or a bride and groom. A bride and groom is simply a brand as well that needs to be revealed to its audience, and it needs to be an extension of who they are. So this mindset, while we talk about it maybe from a more corporate side, is really something that's going to permeate our industry in both the social, corporate, and charitable sides of the industry. So that's really, really good news. And what it means is that, you know, event experience and event experience design is absolutely going to start trumping traditional planning. And what that means is, as designers, we can no longer look at just what we're known for. Like Susie can no longer just look at, you know, linen. She has to go beyond that, because there's more to the experience and there's more to offer. And I quite frankly think it's our responsibility as producers and planners to understand everything we can bring to a client.
Yeah, and to take that one step further, two things. I'll get back to sort of the customization and what I'm doing in response to what we're seeing out there in the industry in a second. But one of the buzzwords that we came upon in our research is this bleisure, business leisure. It's not really a word, but it's going to be a word. And it's sort of the combination of business and leisure. And that we see anything from the corporate world or to social events as well, because everyone wants to incorporate different facets of their world and to make a wholeness about everything that they experience. And so, you know, you heard it first, bleisure is going to be a word in the dictionary soon.
Well, we actually found it on, when we were doing our research, I was looking in the UK, and they're the ones that had used this as bleisure, because it's a reference of combining leisure travel with business travel, and making sure that if you're having a business meeting, that you spend more time at the beginning or end to actually, you know, to take time off to make it a leisure as well. Yeah.
And in events, we can, you know, use that and translate that so that if you're in charge of a conference or something like that, it's not just the educational components, but they're actually incorporating activities and breaks where they're, doing fermented food stations and wellness things within the parameters of the day of programming. And so we're definitely going to see that more and more. And then back to what Dave had started in terms of using what's going on to change what I do, customization and making things authentically mine is obviously really important to me. My background is in art, and with advances in technology and printing capabilities, I'm actually starting to design my own collections in 2020. And this is sort of my response to what's going out there in the world, and how I interpret world events and cultural events, and also just sort of vibes and feelings and emotions that are, relate to events into my work. And it's something that's giving me personal pleasure. It's a lot of hills and valleys, and there's a big learning curve. But what I'm going to come out with next year is something that's quite exciting, and that it's personally mine. I hope that people can use it and interpret it in their own ways, but it's something that makes me, stay in my lane, but do my own thing.
I'm curious, before we get too far away from it, you mentioned this bit about more experienced design versus planner. And I'm curious to know, do you feel that as this trend kind of continues, because I feel like we've actually been hearing this for a little while, as this trend continues, do you think that there's going to be a split? So do you think that planners are going to have to do more experienced design, or do you see that there will be a split in roles where you have an experienced designer and then a planner that executes it, if that makes any sense? That we start to see a division between the planner being the person who's making all the bits go versus the designer who's coming up with the overall experience?
That is an interesting question. So I see it both ways. I see it unfolding both ways. We work with different event professionals that have different tiers. So sometimes we have, someone on the production level, sort of in the grand scheme and the logistics and all of the flow of everything. And then someone that's really focusing on the user experience, the decor, and sort of the design components. And they're merging, whether they're stacked laterally or it's a horizontal split. We're seeing them in both directions in the people that I work with. But what about you, Dave?
Well, for me, it's, first off, I hate the word planner. Tell you right up front, if anyone calls me a planner, I'm going to say I'm not a planner, because I can't stand the name. Because what it drives back to is wedding planning, and wedding planning, as anyone in the business knows, is probably the least respected, even less than the corporate side of it. So I don't like the word because it implies a simpler process than even planners are involved in. So I hate that word in the first place. But with that said, looking at my company, if we were a planner, and what you were referring to was kind of more of an executor of the design, the one that's putting it all on, to me, that would be producer. We've been producing or planning, if I could use that word, we'll just say producing, for many, many years. And the reason why we're now starting to lean towards event experience is because of the commoditization issue. When you're a planner and you're working with actual products, there's a commonality that can be quoted from one person to the next, and you can decide, their couch is more expensive than the other person's couch, or their linen's more expensive than the other linens. But it's not about the commodity itself. It's about the expertise that comes with it. So I got involved 3-4 years ago in the Global Event Forum, which I think you guys probably heard of. It's an initiative created by Aaliyah. It started in Scotland. And we started addressing this commoditization issue. And it actually brought up, I am actually a poster child. My company is a poster child of how you could become commoditized. And because I literally will sit with my producers at a table, at the CEO's table, starting with the strategy and working through it. But then they only want to pay us on the cost of our couch or the cost of our furniture, and that's not where the expertise lies. So there's a separation now, because if you want to be respected as a professional and respected for your expertise, you have to start thinking about event experience to make that distinction. Some people may very well be happy being a planner their entire life or a producer executing. But I want to be seated at the table. Our company wants to be seated at the table when the ideas are just starting to come out, so we can be there to help steer them into the right plan. Because face it, if we're producers and you've been doing this a long time, you know 90% of the tricks in the book, what works and what doesn't, because you've done them all. So you should be sitting at that table at the beginning, not later on. And so that's why it was interesting and distinction. We're kind of doing the same thing, but I'm literally lifting my company away from producer standpoint and actually talking more about strategy with my clients than I ever have for that reason.
So we have a shout out. I know we talked about our live audience. Aubrey Nowinski said hashtag preach.
Aubrey. No,
yeah, she's really enjoying the stuff that you both are saying. Yeah, it's been really interesting. The bleisure thing is something that's always been kind of fascinating for me. Every time I book a flight on Southwest, it asks, am I traveling for business or leisure or both? And always happy to say both. You know, that brings me a lot of joy.
Just say bleisure from now on. Let them figure it out.
Just bleisure. But this whole event strategist and event design thing is so interesting because I've got friends. I studied event management in grad school, so I've got friends who are very much on the side of all I want to do is logistics. That is my jam. That is what brings me joy, is, you know, making sure that the things happen. And then I've got other friends who are very much into the strategy and design side of it. So it's interesting. You know, it's almost like Brandt said, where you kind of need two different sides of the brain almost to work together to bring an event to life. And that's what I love about this industry, is that you do get those people who are on both sides of the spectrum. So we kind of touched on a lot of these trends and overarching trends. One thing I did want to talk about, Susie, I know you mentioned designing yourself, which is really exciting. As you're designing, are you thinking at all about the new Pantone color of the year? Classic Blue was just announced. I know it's been a bit polarizing. I saw some comments on Facebook.
Truth be told, the minute it was announced, my very first text was Dave Merrell.
Yes.
He's like, what do you think? What do you think? I'm sitting at home, it's late in the night for me. And we just started the dialogue right out of the gates. And you're right. I think that I've seen a lot of comments pro and con. For me, first of all, there's no color I don't like. I love color, period. And it's always a challenge to bring it to life. I happen to think that this classic blue is a great color for a variety of reasons. So this blue is sort of, in some descriptions of it, is representative of dusk. It's not pitch dark, midnight, dark blue. And it's not a dark, heavy blue. It's more about lifting and sort of the possibilities as you face forward. And I love that about it, that it's very much opens you, again, back to the mindfulness and sort of opening of the mind. I just think it's really great in that way. From a design perspective, to me, that blue almost reads as a neutral, because I think that you can pair it with anything. So you want to pair it with a metallic, it's going to look great. You want to pair it with pink, you want to pair it with orange. There's sort of endless possibilities of what you can do with it. So while it certainly is color, the fact that you can combine it with so many other colors really brings it to life and creates huge possibilities. I also think that the coolness of the blue is very serene and calming. And again, back to the mindfulness and just sort of about interior design. It's a very welcoming look. Dave and I do talk a lot about trends in interior designs. We watch them both very closely, and they're very parallel with our industry. So bringing blue to life.
It's also parallel with the state of this world right now.
I was going to say, it's very chaotic.
Well, to me, the blue is because she said it's calming. I always look at the strategy and the reasons why Pantone picks them. And you had that, didn't you have that description, Susie? And it was basically because of all the chaos in the world, we're looking for something more calming. And so the
stability, yeah.
At first I was like, oh, blue. And then I'm thinking, well, what am I expecting? Some kind of neon color? And then when I started thinking about it, it made complete sense, because it really is. And in this crazy world we're in, we're looking for, something that's going to calm our soul. The interesting thing is I'm already seeing it in advertising almost instantly, in print advertising and on TV. We're seeing that framing in blue already.
It's gives
And
me
you can make it
anticipation
so,
as well, that it's what's going to be next and what's the future going to bring as we go into a new decade. By the way, it's almost exactly the same color as my new studio, which I was going to repaint, but now I kind of feel like I got to soak in it for a year.
Yeah.
You do.
Classic.
You have to paint next year.
I also really like that you can combine it with black and white and make it super modern, but you can also merge it with like wood tones and khakis and camels and earth tones and bring a completely different vibe. So again, I really think that it leaves, it open for interpretation, and that's what I love about it.
I think I think people just had a very visceral reaction. I don't know what they were expecting, but I think they thought it was kind of lazy and kind of ordinary. And I challenged them. I said, look, it's not the color's job to do your job, right? Like you try and be creative with it. Like that's the challenge, right? Is trying to be creative with it. And like you just mentioned, it's so flexible in the ways that you can make it modern or give it a completely different vibe with these camel colors and things like that. Like it's extremely flexible in the way that it can be used, and I think it's actually really exciting to see how people are going to be using it. I don't think it's boring at all. I personally love the color. So I'm excited about it.
I had the same reaction. Alex had the same reaction. And then I said, what was I expecting? Something way more exciting. And, in the research, what we find is that things that are emerging are reflections of the times and the trends and the environment.
Always. Yeah.
The color is one thing. We're starting to dig right now into fashion, again, because fashion is absolutely an extension of what's happening within the world, as is interior design. The one thing that we kept seeing coming up in interior design, which really surprised me, but made complete sense, is minimalism is back in. Which I thought, because everyone's trying to simplify their lives, they don't want cluttered lives. They want something that's much more simple. So we find that a lot of this stuff is simply a reflection on the times. Mm-hmm. And that's why it evolves. And that's why blue makes complete sense to us now. So
I'm wondering, guys, as we start to touch on these trends that we see that are emerging, are there any ones that you're seeing that are kind of starting to disappear? As the times shift, as we start to move into a new decade, what are the ones that are kind of fading away? And maybe some that should, and maybe some that maybe I'm kind of sad to see that one go.
Trends that are disappearing. I don't know if things are disappearing as more things are just emerging.
Or evolving. A couple of years. Go ahead.
I was saying the one that we kind of ignored for many years was sustainability, and it's rising to the surface every single time. And it's not just about food sustainability, but sustainability and carbon footprint and everything else. And it's permeating almost every aspect of things now, from fabrics that you use to food waste to people traveling in planes and putting carbon into the air. I mean, it's coming everywhere. So it's something that we see just kind of growing and evolving where we can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. Plant-based diets, that's a trend that we talk about in our food and beverage section. And that's all, a lot of that has to do with what it costs to create meat and the carbon load that it puts on our earth. And that's whether it's, beef or chicken or, anything like that. So the sustainability is a good example of that. On the decor design component, one thing, again, more about the evolution rather than something that's disappearing. A couple of years back, Dave and I were doing floral research, and one of the things that sort of emerged was floral rings. I actually think the first year, Dave, we didn't even feature it. It got cut. And then the next year came back and we did floral rings. And then last year we were like, okay, floral rings may be gone, but new iterations of floral rings, trapezoids and suspended things are starting to take its place. So we actually have a lot of research done in suspended florals and things. So it's not that floral rings are gone. It just sort of, they change their shape and then they change their position, they change their geometry, and now it's morphed into something else. And so I think that we see more of that as opposed to something that was like super in and is now super out.
Because most trends, once you have reveal a trend, it may not be commonly known by everybody. When you start doing that trend and people are like, ooh, I want that, and they see pictures, and that's when a trend gets bigger. And then they just kind of get bored on it because there's a new trend that, ooh, I want that instead. So it's not that any trends or anything kind of falls into the background. It's more that other things kind of emerge over top of it.
Well, I think with the sustainability trend, we are seeing things disappear. I mean, Dreamforce, 175,000 person event, just didn't serve beef at their event at all this past year.
I didn't know that, actually. Interesting.
And you're seeing
that's a sustainability issue.
Right, and you're seeing straws disappearing from being offered and things like that. So I think you are seeing waste disappear and like things that are wasteful. I think you are seeing them disappear when you're talking about sustainability.
Oh, okay. I guess if we look at it from that angle, yes. Because
Right.
sustainability, things are disappearing.
Yeah.
Or things
Our
are disappearing, which
like our Earth.
Yeah.
It is funny how cyclical a lot of that stuff is, though, because things that had fallen out of fashion, come back in. And, I was just at an event recently and they had the old oxygen bar going and people were loving it. And they were doing this flavors and this one's going to wake you up. And I was like, that's like 10 years old. But it was like a lot of people had never seen it before.
I'll give you a great example. Last year in our seminar, and we're seeing more and more that balloons are everywhere again. And there was, I don't know about anybody else as a designer, but I wouldn't put balloons in my parties for years. But when you start realizing that there's a huge trend towards the Instagrammable moments, towards photo booths, and one of the best thing that photographs is a balloon, then that's why you're seeing a bunch of them come back. So yeah, and twinkle lights within the balloons. That's another thing I would never do. But I don't think we'll see crepe paper come back. We might, I don't think.
Never say never.
Never say never. But
you know what? The balloons, again, because of technology, the balloons are different. So it's not just Roy G. Biv and the colors of the balloons. With the technology, all of the metallics from rose gold to platinum to bronze are showing up in balloons. They're, the opacity of the balloons has changed. The shape, the size, the scale of them, and the installation of them. I mean, we're seeing them now on the exterior of buildings for holiday installations. And I'm in New York City. I'm like, how are these holding up for 3 weeks in the holiday season in 0 degrees? But with the technology, these cascading balloons can hold up in not just in LA where we've seen them before in exterior, but and again, it's because of the new technology that it enables these companies to reemerge. And I'm with Dave. I was like, never, 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 never. And now I'm like, okay, there's some pretty cool stuff happening here.
Well, and with the technology with the balloons, it's because there's a decline in helium, right? So the technology kind of has to solve that problem. You see at some events now where they have these floating balls that have like giant fans underneath them, right? So they're kind of like a new solution, the new 2020 balloon kind of thing. And they're being used as signs even, like, hey, come over to my booth. There's a giant floating ball above it, which is fascinating.
I really don't want this seminar to be about balloons.
I'm with you on that.
But it's a good example of a material. There's no material that you shouldn't look at twice and go, is there a use for this? Because there is, especially with the onset of the fact that everyone's photographing anything. What looks good in the photograph? Mylar, balloons, things that you would put with those C or D grade parties actually look really good in certain settings if they're being used for backdrops for photographs. So I don't think anything goes away. It's just there's new purposes for these things.
Sure.
I would not do a full balloon party.
Although Aubrey throws in the option of doing balloon dresses. So that's...
Yes.
Aubrey would rock a balloon dress.
Thank you, Aubrey.
So I mean, we are talking technology. What other technology? How is it playing a role in these new event design trends?
So this is kind of my area. I'm the nerd just when it comes to this kind of thing. One of the things, and the one thing I'm really digging into, and we've heard about it for a couple of years, is the onset of the new 5G technology. It's something that's not affecting us yet. And I kept asking myself, why does this matter? Why is this going to be a problem? Because 5G is basically just phones moving faster. But if you think about the applications that now become available if everyone has 5G, and that is virtual and augmented reality, which have these big connectivity issues and why it hasn't been widely used because it has to be on a local server and done a certain way, becomes completely possible with 5G service. And so when 5G comes out, you're going to see a boom in augmented and virtual reality. You're also going to, things you never thought about, like being able to do your hospital or your doctor visit without even going to the doctor is going to become available because they can take your pulse right there and get real-time measurements of what's really happening without having to go into the space. So right now, that's something that I'm spending a lot of time on. What does it mean and how are we going to apply it into the events business? And I think it's something we absolutely have to pay attention to.
Yeah, we were talking a little earlier today to take this one step further, and that's about event flow. Already, a lot of this technology is being used to indicate what to do and where to go. So in LA, for example, not in Pittsburgh, when you pull into a parking garage, you can see above each slot whether it's green or red or whether it's available for parking. When you go into a Whole Foods store in New York City, you can you're told by directional signage based on technology which line is the shortest. So why does that matter to us? Because when we're getting into a convention or sort of event flow within any kind of corporate or social event, using that technology, we talked about it on lanyards and things like that, that not only are they taking information from you, but it's becoming a communication tool. And is it going to be able to guide users to do different things and go different places? I mean, that's a game changer.
And that's why you don't dismiss anything, because giving an example of that RFID technology, those LED bracelets, or the LED lighted bracelets that they would turn on, and then they got them to actually tie into a light board so they could do different, and they could time into music. Well, now they're going to put a receiver in there so they can tell where you are. So if a bar line's too long or there's a bottleneck at the entrance to the exit, they're going to have real-time information to be able to make real-time decisions on correcting crowd flow and doing all kinds of things like that. The technology is already starting to exist. There's one company called Click that has an app that actually has that real-time conversation back and forth. And you're going to start seeing it's a game changer for our industry when we can actually tell what the crowds are doing.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about real time and then in the aftermath. And one of the things about using that technology is for analytics. So of course, everyone wants a return on their investment. And if you can see that some activation or some facet of your party has that heavy flow bottleneck, then it's showing you that something's quite popular, and if something else is vacant, that gives you a lot of data. And I think that another thing that Dave and I do talk about is interest in legacy events and events year after year. So using that data to make wiser, smarter choices in the upcoming year will really, really, change the landscape of what's done that following year.
That's why I say that it's an exciting time for the industry, because all these things are becoming available to our industry at the right time, where marketing dollars are pouring towards us. So this allows us to become more of an expertise on exactly these things that are important for delivering a message, for a perfect experience for attendees, that kind of thing.
And that's why this is a different level than an event planner, a wedding planner. I mean, this is just different level of capabilities and what the expertise is for.
Yeah.
I love the biometrics thing too. Like I just did the facial recognition. I checked in at Expo in Las Vegas using facial recognition. StreamPoint Solutions was doing it for their check-in. And all I had to do was submit a selfie or a photo of my face beforehand. And it was super easy. And then I showed up on site, put my face in 2 seconds. I had my badge. It was fantastic, right? And like, I don't care if they saw my selfie. They can go on Facebook and see my selfie. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's a little big brother.
Yeah, it is a little big brother. And that actually brings us to another talking point, something that we're researching. It's not such a sexy side of things, but talking about safety and security at events. Technology pertains to that. And also, like you said, these selfies and the recognition and the data that they're collecting. I mean, what is going on with that, and what are we using that for? So I think that, safety has to do with cyber safety as well as physical safety on, boots on the ground, which does matter as well. And that is something that needs to be talked about and is currently happening. But two facets of the same issue, really.
And if you can start to predict and see the patterns of the way people are acting and everything else, then you have more control over how they're collaborating, how they're networking. You can actually pair people with people and network and actually force this face-to-face interaction, which is so important for the meeting industry. We're very confident that virtual reality and augmented reality are not going to take over the industry, that we're seeing now that face-to-face communication is way more important than it's ever been, and it will never go away. Doesn't mean that virtual reality is not going to play a bigger role in things, because you're still going to have those people that can't attend that want to see what's happening or be able to see on the outside what's happening. So these streaming and virtual reality are going to stay important. But this technology, this RFID technology and what do you call it again, Alex? Biometrics are going to be really important in helping producers and experienced planners figure out better ways for people to network and collaborate and, crowd shape, things like that.
So I did just want to give a shout out to the Eventpreneur Club who just joined in on Facebook, is watching us. Mahogany Jones is checking us out on Facebook. So I just wanted to give them a little shout out.
Hello, a little love.
But yeah, I think the biometrics is interesting, with Clear at the airport. I can also check in at Clear at the baseball stadium, right? So I can cut the line there. And get through security really quickly. So when you look at those large scale events and things like that, and I think a lot of these trends you're also seeing in different types of events, like festivals and sporting events and things like that. And we have to look away from just the conferences and the events that we may be familiar with and see what's going on across the industry, right? Because who knows? Maybe Clear's going to be at a big, Clear could be at Dreamforce next year. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Well, look, and you're going to be able to purchase things by your thumbprint in the future. So it's going into retail. It's going into everything. You'll sign in and out of events through your thumbprint or through an eye scan. So yes, these things that are being developed in other industries are absolutely going to be taken into our industry. So.
How about some food and beverage?
Yes.
How can we talk about events without food and beverage? Hello.
Yes. Well, and we're actually developing this section a lot bigger this year because Cater Source is there, right? So we have half the food there, half the audience is going to be thinking more food, and the rest of the audience is going to be thinking everything else. So we're developing a lot more in food and beverage this year than ever before. You want to talk about some of the bigger trends, Susie?
Yeah, I mean, first back to the sustainability and transparency and authenticity. One of the things is sort of food telling. It's sort of like storytelling, but it's like sort of the origins of your food and where it went to. It used to be farm to table, and now it's becoming from seed to table. They want to know really from the origin what's happening, where it's coming from, and where it's going. So I think that connection that people are feeling to what they're consuming, and it also goes back to wellness and consumption and well-being, is they care, you are what you eat, and people actually care about that. So that concept plays out in a variety of ways. We're going to be seeing a lot more mixology and people that really are crafting things. Some of the stations are ending up looking like there's a lot more self-service, but even for the ones where there are mixologists on site, it's all about creating your own concoction and being true to you and what your body needs and your mind needs. So those types of things are, really, really important. On the beverage side of things, we're actually seeing boozy teas, which is booze infused teas. CBD is still making a presence. Obviously that plant-based menu is really, really, really important for a whole variety of reasons, which we talked about. And also sort of local spirits. One thing that we're definitely seeing is a word called, what's it called? Locavore, Dave?
Locavore. It's a term that we've been talking about this for a couple of years, and now they've actually got a name for it. And basically it's 30-mile menus. It's stuff that's within 30 miles and so it's local menus. And we're getting more and more requests for that every single day. They want to know who are the farms that are local, was it done you know, was it farm raised or was it not? So I guess it really, with the food telling, it's really all about transparency and ingredients. And it's not just about a movement, but it's also where corporate responsibility is. They have now a responsibility for thinking about wellness to make sure people stay alert and that the foods that are being put out in the snacks are not dragging them down, but keeping them alert. So it's not just something that's a trend, like a consumer trend, but the corporations now know they have a responsibility for food telling and transparency and authenticity as well.
Yeah. Another thing that we noticed in regards to food presentation is sort of the open concept kitchen. I know we talked about this 20 years ago. It was a thing when there were restaurants and they're like, ooh, open kitchens. And that was brand new for the restaurant industry. But in fact, we're seeing this now in home decor, but also in event design, where you're actually creating kitchens within your ballroom or within your open air field so that people can, A, be a part of the interactive activity of it all, B, so that you can be fully transparent and people can see where things are coming from, and C, just because it creates an excitement and it's very in the moment where people want to know and learn about, you know, what they're putting in their bodies. So these open air kitchens have now, we're seeing in our research that they're really starting to rise to the top again as a trend that's, you know, that's happening, and we love it. We think it's cool.
People love seeing fire, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's more than that. It's more than just the open concept. It's also the other concept we're seeing in the interior design industry is wellness kitchens, where they're actually putting, you know, they're actually having vertical like vegetables and actually, you know, putting skylights in the ceiling so they can actually grow these herbs in a wall. And it's really interesting that really starting to go more towards, you know, getting away from frozen foods and getting away from more healthy types of things. And we're seeing that permeate even the interior design industry right now.
It's interesting. We had a very good episode earlier this year on alcohol. And I think one of the big things we talked about there is non-alcoholic drinks, right? Yeah. And the mixologists there and the mocktails and things like that. Are you seeing that as a big trend for 2020?
Definitely notice if they say, the research I did, I can't remember the terminology, they're like, don't call it a mocktail anymore. It's got another new, you know, vibey name to it, but it's essentially a mocktail. And yes, and they actually are even making lower proof wines and beers. And in my opinion, it's like, if I'm going to drink wine or beer, I sort of want I want the alcohol in there. But there's
go back to 3.2 beer.
Yeah, these lower, you know, proof alcohols and wines and beers. And I think, you know, that also has to do with tastes and flavors and people trying to, you know, take that into consideration as opposed to just going out to get the buzz on, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're winding down. We've got about 7 minutes left. I did want to talk a little bit more about the health and wellness. We've kind of touched on it and mentioned it here and there. But, you know, how is that being incorporated into event design? You're seeing so many different things and out there, like the Peloton ad blew up, right? And so many people were interested in that. And it's because they know what Peloton is and the CrossFit things and all that stuff has been so ingrained in our culture lately. I'm starting to be interested in how that's going to permeate into event design.
Event design more than meeting design. Because event design, yeah, you can incorporate some things into the event design, but if you're thinking about an overall event, a series of events happening, it affects the meals they're eating, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It affects the snacks. It affects, you know, putting yoga classes at the beginning of the day is proven to make people more alert during the meeting. So things like that, as Susie mentioned earlier, these really cool bicycle tables where you can go and get on a bike and actually do your work. We're now starting to look at these things and put them to every one of our proposals, even if they're not asking for it, because it shows that we're forward thinking like that. And we're finding that corporations are latching onto it because they have, you know, corporations are now doing 5K runs. They're now doing yoga classes in the mornings They're doing, they're doing more open concept where you can go to the gym in the middle of the day, because they know that a healthy mind, is going to be a much, better employee.
And
So it's,
also, on the social side of things, we're also seeing a lot of, we used to do a lot of engagement parties where, the trips where people are just going to Vegas to, go out and party their butts off. And now we're doing a lot of events that are really focused on wellness and sort of interconnectivity in a positive mindset. So instead of having that, people will get together and they will also do the yoga class, but then they'll have a brunch where everything's all about filling your body with the right fuel, and back to the mixologist and creating different juice bars and, fermented, concoctions and acai stations and power bowls. And so, everything about the experience is not just let's go grab a bunch of girls and go out for a bachelorette party, but let's create a day activity as opposed to an evening, and really focus on, getting ourselves better and, more healthy in the mindset. So, and that's even happening at weddings, not to say that there aren't, bars and people aren't drinking and having fun. But really, we actually are seeing environments for wedding receptions that are filled with just sort of more earthly delights, if you will, and things that are focused on well-being, as opposed to just losing your mind, going off in the other direction. So it is actually coming to life in social events.
It seems like such a natural fit because events are such a community focused thing, right? It's a bunch of people coming together, and you're looking at these trends in health and wellness, and they are community based. CrossFit gyms, they're like this community. Peloton, getting to be part of this digital community and racing against your friends and competing and things like that. So it makes sense that when you come together for a meeting, that wouldn't disappear, right? So I think that's really interesting.
It's the tribe. It's like-mindedness. And that's, again, back to this whole thing about the instability and the uncertainness of the world. I think that knowing your tribe and knowing your people, Soul Cycle is the perfect example as well. It's just, there's something comfortable about it, and there's something that there's collaborativeness in it. And it's just, the tribe effect, the community is really what's driving this forward.
Yeah.
Boom. All right, guys. Well, we're wrapping it up. So we gotta finish with the questions that we always ask of our guests. And so the first one, we'll have each of you do your one tip that you would have for not just event planners, but also event experience designers.
Well, I could start. Mine's pretty simple. You have to realize that you are falling short of all the knowledge you need to really do where our industry is taking us now. And if you are not constantly in education, not just in what you do in a very narrow focus kind of way, but everything around it that affects it, then you're not going to really grow as an event planner. And this is the perfect time to do. Did I just use the word planner?
You did. You did.
And as an event producer, you have to be well-rounded now. So you have to educate yourself in every aspect, not just one.
And it's interesting because my tip is going to be, I don't want to say the opposite, but in some senses building off of it. So because it's a great big world out there, and because you do have to research and experience what's going on in all facets of social media and everything that's out there, you then have to filter it down, and you have to stay in your lane. Because one of the things that's happening is with so much out there, it gets convoluted. You can get confused as a business professional. There's so many different directions to go. And I think that, the struggles start to happen when you start taking on too much and you're not very focused on staying in your lane and doing what you're good at. So I would, to build off of what Dave said, learn, research, never stop, grasping for information, but then filter it down and use it in a way that's personalized and really authentic to yourself.
That's great. And so our last and final question, I do want to shout out one more time to Mahogany Jones before I ask this. She said, include your audience in the design of your events, which I love as well. So last final question, do you have any new cool resources you want to share? Websites, blogs, books, where can people go to find out what you know?
Man, you should see. It's funny how we research things differently, because I was looking at Susie's research. Her and I research was a lot of the same thing because we went to the same resources. there's a bunch of different resources to go after. I'm not going to name one because I look at the meeting industry, I look at the restaurant industry, I look at the hospitality industry, I look at the interior design industry, I look at the fashion industry because there's clues everywhere. So I don't ever narrow it down because something I find in the fashion industry will apply amazingly to what I do.
And for me, Dave and I do research and pull from the same sources, interestingly, just on our own. We always have found that over the years. But again, back to being grounded in who you are, use your brain and use your experiences in life to sort of form and formulate how you lead your life and how you create events. So if something is making me feel good, if I'm connecting to something, whether it's, going to the movies or traveling to a different culture or eating at a restaurant or having a conversation over a cup of tea with someone, what is resonating with you and why is that so? And so in addition to all the research, and I'm a big fan of research because you have to come to where you come to with knowledge, you have to take your personal spin on it and take your own interpretation, because without that, you're just one cookie cutter. You're the same Pinterest board as every other person out there. And so really the way to sort of carve your niche is to figure it out in your head and bring it to life in your own way. So I would agree with, it's not a particular source. It's what you do with the information you collect.
Boom, mic drop moment. There you go. So Susie, we got to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about what you're up to?
So my website is partymosaic.com, and that is a great place to find me and reach out to me. And one more thing, which we didn't touch upon, but real quickly, giving back to the community is really important. And I am the co-founder of a fantastic not-for-profit called Event Pros Take Action. Dave has worked with us and we go to different communities. We just got back from Puerto Rico a second time this year, doing a give back with other industry event professionals. So that's really, really important for making yourself feel good and for giving to this world. And so EPTA, eventprostakeaction.com, is a good place to find me as well.
Fantastic. And Dave, where can folks find out more about you?
Yeah, well, the company is AOO Events, and we have a website, AOOevents.com. You can check us out there. For my company, AOO Events, we are on Twitter and Instagram under the same name. There's also a lot under my own personal name, David Merrell, on Twitter and on Instagram, David E. Merrell on Instagram. So that's where you can find us.
Very nice. And Alex Plaxen, my friend, it's been a while. It's been a pleasure to host with you. What's going on in your world, man?
Nothing. I'm excited. I'm going to. It's the holidays, so I'm taking a little break. But I am heading to California for 3 weeks on Christmas Eve. I'll be at PCMA convening leaders for the first time in a couple years. I'm very excited about that. And so if you're planning to be there, say hi. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice and fantastic. That actually brings up a great opportunity to plug the fact that Will and I will be there as well. And we're going to actually be doing a presentation on 5G and events. So if you want to learn more about 5G and events and how things may or may not be affecting the industry, we'll hope you'll stop by and say hi to us there. We're looking forward to it. It's the first time I've been to convening leaders, so it's definitely something that I've been looking forward to. So hopefully we'll see you all there. And also, you mentioned Click in there, David. We're going to be doing an upcoming episode of Event Tech Podcast, our sister podcast, Event Tech Podcast, on Click, specifically talking to them. We're trying to get one of their customers on as well to kind of talk through the process, so we can go a little bit deeper dive on that. So hopefully, if you haven't checked out Event Tech Podcast before, and check us out over there as well. So once again, thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us wherever you get the show, whether that's delivered directly into your ears because of your favorite podcatcher, like the Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Google Play, Pocket Cast, all of the various apps that are out there. If there is a service that you're on and you're listening to your podcasts on and we're not there, please do let us know. We want to be wherever you want to listen. Best place, however, is to always check us out at event-icons.com. There you're going to get all the show notes, the links to all of the resources that are shared, all of these fantastic things that we've been talking about, sometimes even We were getting the transcriptions, all that kind of stuff on there. So be sure and check us out at event-icons.com. And of course, there's links to all of the favorite podcatchers that are on there as well. So you can subscribe or you can tune in live. And when you tune in live, like Aubrey did and like Mahogany did, then you get to join in the chat and you can be part of our discussion as well. Because we really want it to be all about you guys and getting your questions directly to our guests, to our icons of the industry. So be sure and check us out there, event-icons.com. We want to know what you think, #event icons, or just go ahead and contact us in all of the various socials that you want to do and let us know what do you want to know more about as we move into a new decade. So thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on Event Icons.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #Event Icons.
To catch all the bonus content, resources mentioned, and an invite to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups,
Head to www.event-icons.com. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway. Just tag your post with #Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #Event Icons.